We will be crowning a new regional champion this season with their guaranteed spot in the Anaheim World Championships later this summer. Either Dillon or Andrew. There are some commonalities between these two teams, right? In the Miraidon choice of restricted, it's the difference between Lunala and Calyrex Ice Rider as the secondary restricted.
Looking at the achievements, there's definitely some great achievements on both ends, but the one important achievement I want to talk about is for both of these players, you need some great championship points at this event to help you towards that World's invite. For Andrew, he actually doesn't have any, right? But for the winner of this match, you are not just going to be crowned the Milwaukee Regional Champion, you are going to earn an auto qualification for the World Championships, and I think that is going to be a really big factor into this match. Between two teams that both have a lot of strengths that we've really gotten to see throughout the tournament. We'll start with Dillon here. Miraidon, 7 out of 8 in the top cut. Not surprising here. I love this set though. Instead of going for the Assault Vest for the longevity, the Choice Specs for the damage, you go for the Choice Scarf. We are not playing speed ties around here. We're going to make sure our Miraidon goes first. But you have a faster and a slower mode to this team. The Calyrex Ice Rider for the Trick Room, Farigiraf, Iron Hands as well.
Yes, and the supportive Pokemon like Farigiraf, like Ogerpon Cornerstone, even the Volcarona with Rage Patter, you have double redirection, right? In a team like this where it's really about succeeding with Miraidon or Calyrex Ice Rider, having two separate redirectors in Ogerpon and Volcarona are going to help you to get your success. Helping Hand also from the Farigiraf, stopping priority attacks, stopping Fake Out, right? Helping Hand Glacial Lance is certainly very, very difficult to endure that hit.
A lot of pieces here to protect these two restricted Pokemon in the battle. Looking on Andrew's end, there's also a lot of key pieces to be protecting these Pokemon, but instead you're looking at the Grimmsnarl with the screens to achieve that. Reflect, Light Screen, no matter the situation, Grimmsnarl has got you covered. Thunder Wave as well, a really nice way to be able to slow down the pace. You have to worry about paralysis, all of that other stuff. And this is the Miraidon that we were talking about in comparison, that Assault Vest, something to also help you survive those hits and Snarl to slow things down. But don't be, you know, alarmed. There's also some really powerful attacking options on this team too. The Ursaluna has been one of the biggest Pokemon of this weekend, really finding a great home in this meta. And when you're looking at this Earthquake and the Headlong Rush to really pressure the other team, that has been really nice. I think the only real thing about this Pokemon is the speed tiering can be a little awkward sometimes, but that's where the Lunala, that's where the Trick Room comes in. And if Dillon wants to go for a Trick Room situation, then Ursaluna is still something that can really kind of just catch him off guard, and that could be a really key piece for Andrew here.
Yeah, both of these trainers have access to Snarl on their Miraidon, so there are ways to lower the opposing special attackers, those restricted Pokemon, lower their damage, and of course Grimmsnarl can lower both physical and special attacking damage. But it's finally time. It's been a great weekend, a great introduction to Regulation I with our double restricted format, and let's crown a champion. Andrew Ding, Dillon Kleinvehn, Andrew with Miraidon and Grimmsnarl versus Dillon with Calyrex Ice Rider and Miraidon.
And Dillon is looking for early momentum in this match. You're not just bringing one restricted out to party, you have both. And this again is going to be then the situation for Andrew where you have to decide what you prioritize more. Is it that Reflect for the Calyrex, or is it going to be that Light Screen? We've seen a lot more of the times that the Grimmsnarl opts to go for this Light Screen to make sure the Miraidon's kept a little bit more in check, especially too with a really powerful attack from the Miraidon that can threaten. But again, Assault Vest version for this Miraidon means it's not going to be quite as powerful as a couple of the other ones out there. But Terastallization right away to get this started.
Yeah, immediately on turn one, neither player switching any of their opponents or any of their Pokemon, just wanting to get into the battle, wanting to throw down with this Choice Scarf Terra Electric Miraidon on Dillon's end. And Andrew's going to respond in kind with a Terastallization of his own on his own Miraidon. They're both Terra Electric, however, we know the speed advantage is on Dillon's side because of that Choice Scarf held item, boosting Dillon's Miraidon speed by one stage at the cost of having to lock into one attack. Reflect from this Grimmsnarl is going to mitigate the physical damage for the next 8 turns that Dillon is going to output there. There's the Volt Switch into Grimmsnarl. It is not enough for the one-hit KO, so you're going to need the Glacial Lance to be able to secure that KO. The question is Andrew potential Draco Meteor, potential Electro Drift into the Calyrex? Is Dillon going to get the chance to Glacial Lance that Grimmsnarl?
Again, both of these Miraidons aren't the choice specs, so the damage isn't going to be quite as great, but at the end of the day, it's still a Miraidon, and at this point, you have the Terastallization into the Electrotrape. You have the terrain, so now seeing this Electro Drift,
There it is, Electro Drift, but into which spot? On the switching Ogerpon, or no, into the Calyrex Ice Rider, and it hangs on with 13 HP in the red. Calyrex will Glacial Lance into both of Andrew's Pokemon, KOing the Grimmsnarl and getting solid chip damage onto Miraidon, getting 1 boost to his attack stat with that Chilling Neigh ability.
What a survival from the Calyrex. And now the Grimmsnarl has only been able to add 1 layer of screens that reflect. So when Miraidon comes back in later for Dillon, that can be a lot of damage. Pokemon goes down, so it's going to be Lunala, Andrew's other restricted, now coming to join the fray.
Yeah, Lunala has been absolutely crucial. We've seen it so successful this weekend, not just with Andrew's team composition, but every other time it has been on stream. You have access to Wide Guard to stop Glacial Lance, or you can even just try to go for a straight up attack to knock out the Ice Rider.
Yeah, and with Ogerpon, this cornerstone one, I know your favorite, joining the field, this is something that could do a lot of powerful damage. Of course, there is going to be the screen for the right here, right now of it, but there is always the possibility of these critical hits, and this Ogerpon, again, sturdy. You cannot take it down in just 1 hit. Just like the Lunala on the other end with that Shadow Shield, so that is also going to be a double up. Looking at the spear tierings of this all, this Calyrex Ice Rider is in a very precarious situation, so a swap here makes sense, but that means something coming in is going to take a lot of damage.
And that means Dillon is foregoing that attack increase on Calyrex Ice Rider for when it comes back in. It'll be back right down to neutral. We got to preserve it for later. So Iron Hand switching into this position. The Ivy Cudgel from Ogerpon, no critical hit, does not get the KO into Miraidon, and now a Snarl into 2 physical attackers. Really not going to matter too much there. Andrew maybe anticipating a switch in from a special attacker. Lunala, it's time to click the Trick Room and twist the dimensions. Now for the next 4 turns, the slower Pokemon will be outspeeding the fast Pokemon like Miraidon.
And so when Iron Hands joins the field, Iron Hands is something that is tending to be on the slower end. So that is something that can pressure a lot right away, especially when you're looking on the inherently speedy Miraidon on the other end. Things like the Ogerpon is going to be a little bit more awkwardly positioned, though, especially seeing how fast it was on that previous turn. It is going to be one of the slowest, if not the slowest Pokemon that we have, but it's going to be the Iron Hands first. Wild Charge, only really good for breaking a Shadow Shield, a little bit of damage, but Moongeist Beam in return.
Now that Moongeist Beam is going to be pretty solid damage into the Ogerpon, and more than enough for the KO, so you do not have to be concerned on Andrew's end about an Ivy Cudgel critical hit with Ogerpon being KO'd. Now Miraidon is able to Volt Switch out. You don't often see Miraidon moving the last on the turn, but that's because of Trick Room. It's going to be moving last. You want something maybe slower in the back on Andrew's team that can take advantage of a Trick Room, say an Ursaluna.
There is the Double Moons out on the field, the Ursaluna, as well as that Lunala, and having the Volt Switch, Ursaluna hits the field, instant Flame Orb activation. And that is going to be putting a lot of pressure now in this situation. And now there has to be a decision on Dillon's end, because Calyrex is something that's also good normally in a Trick Room, but you've taken so much damage. Miraidon is one that's going to be a little bit more hard-pressed in this situation, especially with the Choice Scarf. You do have this pressure with the Iron Hands, but that Ursaluna is kind of staring you down.
It looked like Dillon's just not having enough confidence that the Calyrex Ice Rider would underspeed or attack first under these Trick Room turns compared to Ursaluna on Andrew's end, or even the Iron Hands. Usually we see it at the high ends of speed where, you know, a lot of them are trying to figure out their speed tiers. Here, it's under Trick Room. We need to learn the attack order. Wide Guard from Andrew's Lunala is going to stop itself from taking any Earthquake damage. However, this Flame Orb Guts boosted Earthquake into both of Dillon's electric types. It's a double KO.
What an attack coming out from this Ursaluna. Lunala stays safe. Dillon, you cannot stay the same. And now both of those Pokemon go down, and there's only one left in the back, and it's this Calyrex Ice Rider that's taken all the damage.
It's so low at this point. Even if it does get to attack first, it's not going to be able to knock out the Lunala. And Andrew is in such a commanding position at this point. Lunala is so strong, even after the Shadow Shield was broken, was still able to set up Trick Room, still getting Ursaluna onto the field, and Andrew in the spot. I mean, when you terrestrialize immediately, right, you're going to be in a different spot. When you have Terra Electric, you can't even opt out of that ground weakness.
That's one of the issues, and now Wide Guard Lunala again is going to stay safe as anything, even if there is the Glacial Lance, if you don't quite know the speed tierings. But Facade here,
That's going to be enough for the KO, and Andrew Ding's Moon Room duo has gotten him one victory away from a second regional championship.
What a match as well. Being able to set up that trick room aspect of the Moon Room to really enable the Ursaluna at the end. Volt switch, you instantly get the Ursaluna in, you get the Flame Orb, and from there, it was just destruction from Andrew's end. Looking back at this match too, it was really interesting to see a couple of these same pieces like these Miraidons and how differently they're built here. And it was Andrews that was able to do so much more, even if hey, this Calyrex kind of got to stick around. It got to take down the Grimmsnarl. You had already taken so much damage, so it looked like a really cool survival in the moment. It was nice for those early moments of the match because you didn't have that Grimmsnarl to set up another layers of screens or anything else. But in the end, when it was a Trick Room situation that could have been maybe a little bit more beneficial, you just had run out of steam.
There's this somewhat of a rock, paper, scissors appeal to this trio, Sierra, of Miraidon, Lunala, and Ursaluna kind of covering each other's weaknesses. And in positions where Ice Rider or, you know, maybe Iron Hands or Miraidon might feel strong into Lunala or feel strong into other Pokemon, then the Ursaluna with the spread Earthquakes is just going to do so much damage into your two electric types, your rock type Ogerpon on the other end as well. It's almost like, where does Dillon have the damage or the damage mitigation, the damage preservation on his side to endure these super strong hits under Trick Room?
That's the difficult part, because the first thought would be Terrestrialization, but again, that cannot be for the Miraidon when you are looking at that Terrestrialization into the electric type. Iron Hands instead could be something that if you had saved the Terrestrialization like for that, but again, into the water type, it's still just going to be neutral hits from something like that Lunala. And the rest of the Pokemon on this team, even to the Calyrex Ice Rider, if you try and save that for the later game, well, that's the fire Terrestrialization.
Fire, right?
That doesn't help you out.
Still weak to ground. So at this point, Ursaluna, if it is able to properly switch onto the field, I think at any point, if Dillon sees Lunala, he has to be worried at any point that immediately Ursaluna can swap onto the field, because that Shadow Shield essentially ensures, almost like a pseudo free focus sash, you're going to take less damage at full HP, that Lunala can set up Trick Room for Ursaluna.
So it's going to be if you can stop the Trick Room, which is a difficult one, or how you can navigate it. Anything, but it's time to now head into Game 2 here and see the leads.
Yes, Dillon Kleinvehn, with his back against the wall, wants to force a Game 3 to have any chance of walking out as the Milwaukee Regional Champion. Iron Hands, Calyrex Ice Rider versus Andrews, Miraidon, and Grimmsnarl yet again.
And what a difference of lead here coming out from Dillon. When you opt into the Miraidon v Miraidon, you see the Terrestrialization spent early because you kind of have to. You got a lot of damage, but again, it just wasn't quite enough. Now, Andrew does have the opportunity to go for the screen, but you do have the chance to even just go for the Trick Room. You have Fake Out on your side, and when you are staring down a faster Pokemon, that could be key. I would be worried about a Volt Switch or even just a Hard Switch into something slower in the back, knowing that you do have two slower Pokemon for Dillon, and a Trick Room is very tempting. So right away a swap, and that's a Lunala sent in.
That's also a Ghost type that's not going to take any damage from Fake Out. A normal type attack gets the defense increase from the Electric Seed, activating thanks to the electric terrain being on the field. So it's going to be even stronger into these two physical attackers, does not take Fake Out damage, and Grimmsnarl sets up Reflect. So really, Dillon is going to have most of his damage mitigated here. Calyrex doesn't even click Glacial Lance. He sets the Trick Room up for Andrew. Now with Iron Hands and Calyrex, they are the naturally slowest Pokemon on the field.
The Lunala is definitely a Pokemon that can survive into this Trick Room situation, but I still think when you look at the speed advantages, until the Ursaluna hits the field, if Andrew does have that in the back, the advantage still for Dillon in this position. Shadow Shield is intact for Lunala, so that's going to be the first step, but no Wild Guard, so this will be taking the attack.
That's right. Shadow Shield is broken. Wild Charge into Lunala that does have the Quirk Drive boost, and it still does not do a lot of damage. That's how bulky Electric Seed plus Reflect make this Lunala. There's the Spirit Break into Iron Hands. It is a critical hit. At that point, that could be absolutely massive because it looks like the follow-up on the next attack would be enough to knock it out. Does Moongeist Beam go into the Ice Rider? Yes, it's super effective, but not enough for the knockout. So at least Dillon will get one more turn with each of these two Pokemon. But if you think about it, I mean, it's still a very healthy Lunala, and it looks like Iron Hands will get knocked out on the next attack from the next Spirit Break.
And we got a little insight to what Dillon has brought to this match, and there is no other restricted Pokemon in sight. Miraidon has been left at home. So you are trying to take this to a Game 3 with only one restricted Pokemon, and it is not very healthy at that. sure, the speed is in your favor, but there's Reflect Up on the other end. You're not dealing that damage that you really need, and you are just one turn away from losing the only restricted you have in the match. It's Iron Hands that is going to switch, though, into this Volcarona.
There's so many mind games right now where if he wants to click Glacial Lance for any attack, any strong damage at any point, Lunala can just click Wide Guard and negate that. For now, Grimmsnarl is just going to hit the light screen, mitigating damage from special attacks for the next 8 turns. Moongeist Beam goes into Calyrex Ice Rider's Protect, so Volcarona does get to sit on the field very safely, not taking any damage. You do have access to Rage Powder to redirect away attacks and keep Calyrex safe.
It depends on what Andrew wants to go for here, because if you're, of course, you need to keep this Calyrex safe. This is protect this Calyrex. And if you go for the Rage Powder and attack with the Calyrex, if all of a sudden Andrew just sets up this Wide Guard and you've gone for something like the Glacial Lance, which would have been your best attack probably in that situation, that is not going to gain you any momentum. But Calyrex, another way to protect it, switch it out for Rigorath, is going to be joining us.
Farigiraf with an Electric Seed of its own. This was kind of, Farigiraf was doing Lunala's job before you were allowed to have a second restricted on your team last regulation with the Psychic type Electric Seed Trick Room access as well. Ursaluna swaps into that Grimmsnarl spot, and there's a Wide Guard. That's not going to matter here since the Calyrex Ice Rider had swapped out, so no damage from Andrew's end of the field. Will just be Volcarona firing off a Fiery Dance into the Lunala spot, bringing it down to half HP. Special attack increase on the Fiery Dance as well for this Volcarona, but Andrew does activate that Flame Orb for Ursaluna.
So this Ursaluna is something, especially now that we are still having a one more turn of Trick Room, can output a lot of damage. Volcarona getting that boost is going to be nice, but will you be able to really take advantage of it? That's going to be the big question here. If this Ursaluna gets to attack, you have 2 full health Pokemon, so that could be a nice little thing for this moment. But again, the Farigiraf doesn't have Protect, so if you do think that this Ursaluna is just straight up under speeding you, the Volcarona is the only thing that can really protect past this turn.
Volcarona will protect in this final turn of Trick Room to keep itself completely healthy. Want to hold on to that special attack boost, and Ursaluna does not care. Will Facade into the Farigiraf. Foul play into this boosted defense on the Lunala is just not enough to take it out. Will get the damage back into Farigiraf, who is in the red. Dillon is slowly but surely losing HP at this point. All of his Pokemon, as Trick Room finally expires, they've all, except for Volcarona, taken very heavy damage.
And this is what's going to be really tough about this situation, because you've taken so much damage. Trick Room is no longer up, which is good for the Volcarona.
That's great for Miraidon when it switches back in.
Yeah, it's good for the Volcarona, but it's kind of bad for everything else on Dillon's team, and Andrew's going to be the one that profits. If a Pokemon gets KO'd at this point, it's a Miraidon that can run away with the match. So Volcarona goes first. That will claim a KO.
Yep, does get the knockout thanks to that first special attack increase. Now Volcarona is going to pick up a second while we're at it. +2 special attack on this full HP Volcarona. And the foul play into Ursaluna. That's a pretty high attack, but it actually doesn't help out there because of how Burn operates. Facade with the one-hit KO into Volcarona, and now Dillon has lost his sweeper with that +2 special attack. I feel like that was the way for Volcarona to try to take this game, but it's gone.
Yeah, the foul play is not doing the damage. You don't have the speed. Calyrex hits the field. It doesn't have the health either. And maybe you protect something, you allow a Pokemon to go down, you bring the Iron Hands in for a fake out, but then it's still what you're able to do past there, and I think Andrew just has too much momentum in this position, and with Lunala going down, Andrew again was the player that brought 2 restricteds into this fight, and now this Miraidon sitting there on the field. I think the only one thing is, hey, this Miraidon doesn't actually have the Dazzling Gleam, but when I'm staring down all of these Pokemon, I really don't know if that one's going to matter in the end.
Yeah, there's such low HP at this point that any type of attack would be enough to knock it out. Calyrex will protect itself on this turn, allowing the Electro Drift goes into that protected slot there. So now up to Farigiraf to attack next, or the Ursaluna getting the Facade before Farigiraf even attacked. Farigiraf can't even get any more chip damage before it goes down. Dillon down to his final 2 Pokemon, and they're heavily damaged.
An opportunity to get back into this, especially with Tyrion, maybe go for a Trick Room, maybe be able to underspeed, maybe any sort of momentum. But now Farigiraf goes down. Calyrex was good for that turn of the game, so Iron Hands will be allowed to hit the field. You get the Cork Drive, but notably as well, you're going to get the Fake Out on this turn. This is going to be your one turn to try and get as much momentum as possible. But again, when we're looking at this Calyrex that doesn't really have boosts, how much damage are you going to be able to do into the Miraidon? If you can fake out and do enough, well, there might be a way.
Dillon has to hope on hope at this point that this Iron Hands with the Quark Drive boost will be able to do enough to force a Game 3, but his back is certainly against the wall right now. Grimmsnarl swapping into that Miraidon position here to take the damage instead. Finally, time to terrestrialize in this game. Looks like the Ursaluna turning into a ghost type. You do not want to take super effective fighting damage from the Iron Hands on the other side. So now that's going to be, and also Glacial Lance would be super effective. So very smart defensive terrestrialization out of Andrew. The fake out goes into Grimmsnarl, who didn't even attack this turn, just swapped in. Glacial Lance into both, but because of the reflect, Grimmsnarl and Ursaluna will hang on. Ursaluna is going to knock out everyone else on the field, and Andrew Ding walks into Milwaukee with a crazy weekend, a crazy team, and he will leave it punching his ticket to Anaheim.